What's the dog's name?
Max. Hey, Janelle. What's wrong with Wolfie? I can hear him barking. Is he okay?
Wolfie's fine, honey. Wolfie's just fine.
Welcome to What's Wrong with Wolfie.
Greetings and welcome to What's Wrong with Wolfie, a retro podcast dedicated to pop culture of the 80s, 90s and zeros. My name is Jason.
And I'm Rich. I'm Chris.
And I'm Steve.
This time, we have a spoiler-filled discussion on the TV phenomenon Breaking Bad.
My name is Walter White. There are going to be some things that you'll come to learn about me. No matter how it may look, I only had you in my heart.
You understood what I've just said to you?
Yes, lung cancer. Inoperable. It's just, you've got mustard. Chemistry is the study of change.
How was your day?
Write down this!
It's fine.
You want to cook crystal meth?
You know the business, and I know the chemistry.
We got new players in town. They possess an extremely high skill set.
You are not how I remember you from class. I mean, like, not at all.
Thinking Albuquerque just might have a new kingpin. Nobody moves crystal in the South but me! Get a little excitement in your life.
Someday.
Run, Mr. White, run!
You want to make some cash for your people before you check out. That's why you're doing all this.
People sometimes do things for their families.
Yeah, Mr. White. Yes, science. We're gonna make a lot of money together.
Set and filmed in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the series follows Walter White, an underpaid, overqualified, and dispirited high school chemistry teacher who is struggling with a recent diagnosis of stage 3 lung cancer. White turns to a life of crime and partners with former student Jesse Pinkman to produce and distribute meth to secure his family's financial future before he dies, while navigating the dangers of the criminal underworld. When I first started doing the podcast, I never thought that we'd sit down to be discussing Breaking Bad, but we're here, this is what we're doing, and I'm very excited. We've allowed ourselves this opportunity for many reasons. And Steve, like, Breaking Bad, it kind of broke TV in some ways, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Kind of surprisingly, too, because it's hardly the first prestige television show to exist. But I think Breaking Bad it felt different because it still had obviously there's a main overarching story. Breaking Bad is not really like an episodic Monster of the Week show, but it feels more like that than any of the other prestige TV that came before. It feels like a TV show rather than trying to be prestige TV. It feels like a normal TV show whilst also being extremely fucking fantastically well made and acted and scripted and shot. So yeah, and it's also a show that started really small. I remember way back in the day, people would talk about Breaking Bad and they would say it's the best show no one's watching, and the ratings were abysmal. But thankfully, TV executives gave it the chance, and they were absolutely right to do that, because then slowly but surely it took over the world. And as you say, it broke TV.
And Rich, were you there for the start, or were you a person that kind of came a bit later?
I was very much not there at the start, and I think this would be the first example of me of like a prestige show, something I really got into. I think growing up, I was more just very much a film-centric person. There were obviously shows I was into, like growing up as a kid, and then probably the nearest thing would have been X-Files. Even then, I was still of that age where it was just this like cool thing I'd watch on TV. It wasn't that awareness, the idea of prestige television, something you really wanted to talk to people about like the next day. So yeah, Breaking Bad really passed me by, and then I don't know who really got me to try it out, but basically I was actually home recovering from an operation and I just decided to binge the first 4 seasons and then the first half of season 5, because obviously at that point it was split in 2. And so I basically caught up from the very first episode to the mid-season break of the final season, and then, just waited for it to come back, and was just, I completely fell in love with it. I must have watched, I don't know how many episodes I watched back to back to back on the consecutive days, but it blew me away. It was like nothing I'd seen before. Just how mature it felt. I never had a diet of shows like Sopranos, anything like that. Something never clicked with me with other shows of similar caliber. Always been a bit of a big fan of Bryan Cranston from Malcolm in the Middle, so that was kind of a bit of a pull, I guess, into watching it. But it did break television. It was a disruptor, I guess. And what I think was still mind-blowing about it is that, at least in the UK, but I think globally as well, when it actually started, it didn't set the world on fire at all. No one was really bothered about it. It didn't really pull in crazy ratings, but obviously AMC stuck with it. And it just, by I think the 2nd or 3rd season, it just got traction, word of mouth, and just grew into this just monster. And by the end of it, you would never have known that it had modest success at the start. You would have thought it was just this massive, Game of Thrones style, just absolute juggernaut. But it started off small, probably to the point it probably wasn't going to actually run past the first season. I don't know, but it's amazing how we look back at it now, and it's just, for many people, including myself, it's the best TV show ever made. So, I absolutely adore it.
Is it fair, though, that, we're watching series 1, can you see why it didn't get picked up or people weren't interested in it?
I think probably it's weird because you think in a way this works for it, but it's probably just the fact it's kind of a weird premise. I still think it was probably finding itself, because you look back at characters like Jesse now and we think, oh, they're so just legendary, but even then at the show at the time, he wasn't going to survive past the first season. So I think whatever they were doing in the background, maybe they weren't sure of themselves in the writing, and that's not to say at all that the first season's not good. It's amazing, but I don't think it was fully fleshed out to the point that maybe it didn't click with the viewer at the time. I don't think they saw what was ahead. They didn't get a feeling of, oh, this is going to be something. They just saw this weird dropout student character and this professor, teacher in a Winnebago in the desert. And I think it's just weird to the point that people didn't know quite what to feel. And maybe they thought it was kind of jumping the shark a little bit. It was a bit too out there, the whole concept of he's going to become a meth cook. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I did notice, so that trailer that we just listened to, I feel like the marketing at the time was bad.
Yeah.
Or at least it didn't reflect what the show actually was. Because I remember I didn't watch it at the time. I didn't feel compelled to watch it, because all I'd seen was a guy in his pants stood in the desert holding a gun with a gas mask on. Yeah. And the vibe was zany. It was zany crime caper.
It was Malcolm's dad, really.
It just didn't really do it for me. And I think that might have been true for a lot of people, I guess. It was not until word of mouth went around that it was more than that people started to clock onto it, I guess.
It's true, because I remember around the time that Breaking Bad first come out, and people were just starting to catch on to it. And my nephew was banging on about it, saying how great it was. And I kept dismissing him, like, oh man, what? A TV show about chemistry who turns into a drug dealer? That sounds shit. I ain't watching that. Obviously, a few years later, I'm like eating my hat because it was, it is some of the best telly ever made. I can totally get that, what you're saying.
I think even as an outside observer, I was obviously always aware of this show. It wasn't like I had no idea it existed, and then one day someone said, oh, you should watch this show. I knew it was there, and I think even then I saw pictures, and I think I was even cynical enough then to look at it and think, that looks a bit try hard to me, I'm not going to watch that. So I just went off and did my thing, and I just kind of ignored it. I don't know. Again, it's just a weird concept, and not something at the time. I think if you put it in front of me, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm watching that. Wasn't bothered.
Yeah, I mean, Breaking Bad was turned into our lockdown binge TV show because we had heard of a lot of great stuff about it. Obviously, through the years, but the length of the show, I guess, it kind of put us off a little bit from watching it. But obviously, in lockdown, we had plenty of time on our hands, so it was all on Netflix. So it was quite accessible. So we thought, why not? Let's give it a go. And we carved through that very quickly, indeed. But Chris, like, was it jarring for you for Bryan Cranston to go from Malcolm in the Middle to this drug dealing chemistry?
Yeah, I mean, all of our introductions to this show sound very similar. At the time, I was working a butcher shop, and mainly old guys. And there's a couple of young guys there, sort of about my age at the time, and they kept talking about this show. And like Rich, and like yourself, Jason, and Steve, I knew of it. I saw the promos run on, was it one of the Sky channels was carrying it over here at the time?
Yeah, I can't think which one it was.
So, one of the satellite channels, and I remember knowing of it, and I remember sitting there going, that's Malcolm's dad. What the hell is this? This gritty thing. Wait, and then you're like, well, wait, okay. And then it just passed me by, because life got busy, and you forget about it. And they kept talking about it over and over, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. And just like we were discussing before recording, life just goes on and you forget it exists. And it never bothered me until we moved into our first house, I think 2009, 2010. So we had our own place to, without having to watch what everyone else was watching and so on and so. And we started watching it. And then, weirdly enough, Richard messaged me out of the blue after his op. And so if you've been watching this, and I actually said to him, funnily enough, about 3 or 4 months before, we'd tried to watch it, or we'd given it a go and then just forgotten about it for a while. And it was actually Rich that got me to actually invest in it properly.
You remember this stuff, seriously. I'm really chuffed I was the person, so fantastic. Go me.
No, it was one of those things, again, it was on our radar, we tried to watch it, I don't know what happened, and we just... I think because Nick at the time was working for Tesco and she wasn't finishing till like 10, 11 p.m. at night some days.
So specific, I love you.
No, it was one of those, my brain is just insane. And I remember the message from you saying, you need to check this show out. And I remember I can't remember how it happened. And we started watching it and we're like, this is actually pretty fucking good. And like you, it annoyed us to a point where why did we wait until it's 4 seasons in to try it? So we'd all kind of missed that hype, hadn't we? It'd become this massive thing around us. And we all kind of jumped on, didn't we? Like, it must have been, the last year or 2 of the show?
Yeah.
And I kind of felt bad because I was like, this is great. And we weren't part of that hype train. But also, it was kind of nice to discover a new show, something completely different to what you'd watched before.
And you had a lot of it to watch as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the secret ingredient is, but there's something very, very bingeable about this show.
Yeah. I don't know what it is either. It just has this magic hold that you just like, maybe it was a lightning in a bottle situation where they just got the perfect cast and the perfect behind the scenes people. It's difficult to pin down, isn't it? It's just like...
Something about the way it's produced, it's just, watching it is like eating chocolate, and I could just keep going. As like, if there were 100 episodes, I could sit there and watch 100 in a row. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
But again, it's like you don't think about it, but the cinematography of the show is stunning. Setting it in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it just looks...
It was a character.
Gorgeous.
The place was a character.
It wasn't just another disposable show shot in Vancouver. Or, it was different, and it had some prestige people behind it as well, coming straight off of success after success after success, including most of the actors.
Yeah.
And this is Dean Norris's, I think, 2nd or 3rd Hollywood career. I
think it's got
just mad.
Yeah, I think like it's just intriguing as well. Like the whole thing, like the characters are intriguing. Like Jesse, just on his own, is an amazing character. And we'll get into him a bit later when we talk about the cast. But then that whole like contrast between Jesse and Walter was just so intriguing. I think that's what hooked me to want to carry on watching it. Mostly was to see this relationship between these two completely different people trying to work together to do this business.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing about the show that really grips you is the journey that Walter takes in this show.
God, yeah.
And the way in which the the writers and the creators did it was marvelous, because as a viewer, you didn't really see it either straight away. And you obviously, when you see him in series 1, he seems a very much Joe Bloggs chemistry teacher with a family who's got lung cancer now, is going to die. Great. But then, you know, as the series progresses, it's very slow, his change from that teacher, Joe Bloggs kind of guy, to Eisenberg, to this like massive drug dealing killing machine. And I think that's what did it for me, was not only the relationship between the characters and how different they were together, and this like really well plotted out journey that Walter took to become this other person.
I think early on he really did cut quite a, at times, pathetic figure. And obviously it was heightened by the fact he had crisis going on in his life, you know, getting a diagnosis, but seeing him having to juggle working at the school and then working at the car wash, and he just felt like he's just a real down in his luck kind of guy. You felt for him, and then seeing how he grew, and you wonder how much of it that was in him the whole time, and obviously it's brought it out of him. It wasn't like he changed, like being around, you know, nefarious, you know, characters in a very shady business made him that. You just wonder how much of that was already in him, and it was just suppressed because he's living this dull life, you know, seemingly dull life, and he's got no direction. I don't know. It's I mean, it's so push and pull as well. But there's times I just love him, and then as it went on, I didn't like him. I thought, and it was obviously intentional, but I just thought he's a piece of shit. Like, and I love that.
Yeah,
I think
brilliant.
What I loved about it was that the show did eventually unfold and tell you, or show you rather, that Walter White was always a dick, and that he's driven by ego, and that his kind of mild-mannered way is cowardice, really, and he's sort of a people pleaser, but whilst secretly resenting everyone around him. I mean, you learn about his like, he was part of some project, right, that won a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
But then he dumped all of that because he fell out with his girlfriend at the time. And so that's why he's not successful, is because he dropped his important work he was doing because he fell out with his girlfriend. So now he resents everyone else because he's a teacher that earns a low wage and has to work part-time in a car wash. And you see him making reckless decisions with his wife because he wants children for his ego, even though they can't afford it. And then they struggle financially. So he brings this all on himself, really. And it's not until there's the inciting incident, which is obviously him having lung cancer, that he then starts to think the way Heisenberg does, which is, I'm going to have to do crime now. And then once he's doing crime, it doesn't take very long for him to just be all in on doing crime. Like, he feels bad about it for like a little bit, but it really doesn't take long for him to completely embrace his new crime life. And as we see, fucking love it. And he's feeding his ego in a way that he's never had the chance to before. And he's just a bad guy, right? And before he does a crime, he's a bad guy in a fairly innocuous way. He's a bad guy in the same way that most of us are, you know, a bit shit. But yeah, once he's doing crime, he really blossoms into a bad guy. It's great.
He finds himself in not the worst way. So
yeah, exactly.
That's what I was going to bring up. Like, it's almost like a perfect analog to the midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
we've all been there. We've all had breakdowns. We've all had our asses handed to us when you just become comfortable, and then you get into a routine and you do the same routine, live, die, repeat. And then to finally have that taste of something that's not the usual routine. Obviously, Breaking Bad's got that veneer of drug dealer, crime boss thing, but in a way, I think fundamentally everyone can relate to the concept of Breaking Bad, where you just get bored of the monotony of things, and then you have that excitement again, and you have that lust for life again, and you realise you can actually do things. But obviously in the Breaking Bad world, it's just bad things, but you just see this, like you said, mild-mannered teacher that threw his career away for a girl. Haven't we all done stuff like that in the past? It just speaks to everyone on such a level that it has so much rewatchability. I mean, and I'm kicking myself because I haven't rewatched it for quite a while now. But to see, like Steve said, they've got the underlying narcissistic traits. But I think, like you said, we all kind of have them, but we never... Mm-hmm. They're primal impulses. They're pre-installed in us on a chemical level, but by Walt gaining that power and more confidence, and then more power because of that confidence, and then it just escalates to the point of no return, where he loves it. He loves being the one who knocks. And again, Vince Gilligan somehow manages to perfectly balance comedy, drama, and intrigue and thriller and suspense.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it, because if you look at his track record, his episodes for the X-Files were always the funny ones, but they were also the extremely clever ones at the same time. So to do this show completely different to what he's done before and have that perfect balance, it just works. You can't help but like the guy and hate him at the same time.
Yeah, it was very push and pull with me. Obviously by design, but...
Yeah.
I'll tell you one of the other things I liked about Breaking Bad was the actual chemistry. Like,
my dad appreciated it when I was like, hey, look, Dad, I'm into elements now. And he's like...
Because, I mean, obviously, I've never really looked into the creation of meth. I never really knew what really goes into it, and I'm sure they never were... I mean, they went into quite a bit detail, but I'm sure they didn't go completely detail. I hope not, because they just wrote an instruction manual for people who want to create meth. But
I think I remember them saying at the time is that they are as authentic as possible, but they change or obfuscate the most important steps so that nobody can actually learn how to cook meth.
That's very responsible. That's very responsible.
Yes.
Very good.
And it's do you think the whole making it blue in the show is kind of a way of almost kind of softening it? Like, hey, look, it's this. It makes it almost a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it works in the narrative, but also I think you're right. There probably was a benefit in not just constantly showing crystals of meth all the time.
Yeah,
and also it's a visual storytelling element as well, because a chunk of clear or white crystal shit's boring. Make it fucking blue or kryptonite green. Make it look like fucking Star Trek style, whatever crystals. It's fun. It's blue.
It's also
great.
just a really good shorthand, because you know that if you see blue meth, you know it's the good shit and it was made by Walt White.
Exactly.
It's subliminal messaging on the creator's point.
Show, because there's such an array of talent in this show and such a great bunch of characters that I think we're going to be spending quite a bit of time here. And we've talked about Walter White already in his kind of journey through the show, but obviously Bryan Cranston was the guy who portrayed him in the show, and I'm sure it's fair to say that I speak for all of us when I say that he did an exceptional job.
Oh yeah. Can't say much more than that, really.
No.
Yeah, he's incredible, yeah.
But, I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, was it a jump from Malcolm in the Middle to Breaking Bad? I don't know if he did anything in between, or did we know of anything that he did in between those two shows? I don't know, but
nothing stands out to me. I mean, I'm not an expert, but yeah, I can't think of anything else that he would have done.
Nothing between, but I always fondly think of him. Remember him as the voice of Pudgy Pig from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So his most notable role.
Wasn't he Zordon's voice in Power Rangers as well?
No. He did other voices for other monsters. Like just your throwaway monsters, but Pudgy Pig is iconic, and then he was Zordon in the film. So, but again,
that's where I'm thinking of.
Yeah, face and all, but yeah, between Malcolm and Breaking Bad, it's like a real black hole for me. I can't think of anything.
No.
No.
And I don't remember when Malcolm wrapped up, but it can't have been much of a gap between the two. I'd highly doubt it.
I wasn't really a Malcolm in the Middle guy, so it was Breaking Bad first for me. It was my first introduction, and then people would show me videos of Bryan Cranston roller skating while wearing pink shorts, and that would blow my mind. What the fuck?
He's got range. He's got range, that man.
He does.
You know,
he does.
I'm coming at it from the complete opposite side because Malcolm in the Middle, you get home from school or whatever, and it would be on at that time in the afternoon or early evening. And my brother was a couple of years younger than me, so he was the perfect capture audience for Malcolm in the Middle. So I knew of him as Hal first, this madcap, ever-suffering father with so many kids and just going on these madcap moments. And then to see him, he's such a gifted comedic actor and performer. And then to put him in something which is so serious, it takes you a while to get used to it, but also, like many comedic actors, they take to serious stuff like a duck to water, and I don't know, it just works. Although he does go full on Hal in some episodes of Breaking Bad, you can't not unsee it. But coming from the other side, I knew him predominantly as Hal from Malcolm in the Middle, so it's really refreshing to see what he could do.
It must have been really refreshing for him personally as well.
Well, yeah, because you don't want to get stuck in that rut of being typecast, do you? As always being the comedy folly in these things. And
no.
Exactly.
And if he's only been doing like Malcolm in the Middle and Power Rangers and other such similar things, for him to land this role, to show his full potential as an actor, it must have been, I don't know, he must have been very happy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, probably at the time, he probably entered this show thinking, no, this sounds like it's going to be a good, fun project, and probably didn't know that it was going to become this absolute monster, like, TV phenomena. So,
and do you think it's a bit of a shame that, I mean, I know he's done some bits after Breaking Bad. I mean, he was in Godzilla.
For 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That pissed me off so much.
They really hammered that home, didn't they? Bryan Cranston. Oh,
he's in the trailer. Look how...
Oh, he's dead? He's not coming back? No, he never comes back?
Spoilers. Okay. But I don't know, like, I haven't really seen him in any kind of high-profile thing since, really, have we? And then I feel that's a bit of a shame, because of the range of acting that he showed in this film, not film, but in this show, and his comedic performances as well, to show what a great actor he is. And I feel like he's been underutilized, apart from being
he gets his pick now, right? Like, he can turn down or accept whatever he wants. And I think he has done quite a lot. I think he just hasn't done anything that's caught fire in the same way as Breaking Bad. The name of the shows are escaping me right now, but I remember reading about him doing a lot of good work. They're just not in TV shows that have the same sort of incredible broad appeal that really
there is
take
that
off.
new show he's in now that I think it's Your Honor.
Your Honor, that's it.
That I've not watched yet, but I keep seeing the art appearing. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna put that on my list. But I hear good things.
It's like your Daniels Radcliffe, right? Like, you're in something massive, and then you spend a lot of years just choosing the stuff that's interesting to you. And like, he's not really been anything huge, right?
No, he's I tip my hat to him. He works on things that he really wants to do. He's not like, put him in the MCU. He picks his projects. He wants to challenge himself and just have interesting roles, which is nice, and obviously proves that with success you can just kind of fucking be selective and not just throw yourself out there for any big studio project. So good on him.
Well, let's get on to Jesse Pinkman, Mr. Aaron Paul. And, I mean, this was my first introduction to Aaron. But, I mean, he played Jesse yet again. So, like, I think this was one of the other interesting factors for me in Breaking Bad, was the fact that this was a place and these were characters that I wasn't very familiar with. Like, I wasn't very familiar with the Jesse character and the way he behaved and the way he spoke. Because obviously I'm English. I'm in England. We don't talk. Well, maybe some of us do, but majority of people I hang around with don't talk like that.
It made you feel old watching him. Like, even at the time, I was like, God, I'm not cool at all. Sure. I need to say bitch more. So
yeah, But he had that kind of swagger, didn't he? He had that kind of, I don't know, intrigueness as well. And Aaron pulled him off really well, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's extremely likable from the get-go. It's just a shame about how he's a victim, right? He's a drug addict, and that makes him do and say some fucked up things. So he's a character that you really, really want to like, and then he does something that makes you think, oh no, you're a shitbag. That's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of times we did feel sorry for him with stuff that had happened and situations that he found himself into, but most of it he kind of put upon himself.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of almost cartoonish in a way of a character that he cut with Jesse, and he was still very much kind of the analog for the viewer. You kind of were, in a way, experiencing the show through him, but at the same time not, because again, he was very... he was a very distinct character. He wasn't kind of just straight, kind of just, average, like, everyman character. He was, bitch, that stuff. He just was in your face, but he was just so goddamn sympathetic throughout. I never had the emotional roller coaster with him that I did with Walt. I never had a moment where I really didn't like Jesse whatsoever. I might get annoyed at him for making decisions, but most of the time I just felt really bloody sad for him, and especially when you get to Jane, and it's, I cried like an absolute psycho in all episode. I thought it was his chance. He had his chance. He had his his happy escape and denied. And I don't know, but he's just phenomenalness. And fun fact, he actually went to my wife's high school. He was like a few years above her. He was a senior when she was in Centennial High School in Idaho.
I was actually going to bring it up because I remember sitting in a pub when we all started watching Breaking Bad, and Rachel brought it up, and I've remembered it to this day because I was like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like, what?
Yep.
Of all the places in America, of all the places, just blew me away.
Yeah, crazy times. So I was very surprised and quite excited when I found out, but that's enough of me.
He also, I think, like, especially where Walt was starting to go off on to being the drug lord that he became. Like, Jesse was sometimes like more of a moral compass.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a moral compass in that he understood more about the drug world than Walt did. And so he would say, don't do that, because that's going to make bad things happen. And because Walter White is kind of a prick, he didn't really take Jesse that seriously. But yeah, very much so. Jesse was a real asset to Walter, even if he didn't realise it.
Okay, the next actor, I do apologise right now.
Oh no.
Giancarlo Esposito. How's that?
Very good.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you get points.
Thank you. Awesome. Get in.
And what do points mean? Oh, come on, lads.
Wow, we really left you hanging there. I'm sorry. Prizes, Chris. Chris, prizes. He means prizes.
There we go.
And again, another introduction to him as an actor. I've never really seen much of him beforehand.
Never seen him before.
We've seen a lot of him since. He's definitely done better in projects, I guess, since Breaking Bad than both Aaron and Brian, I would say. But I can possibly say, he's got a certain, I don't know what word it is about him that he portrays onto the screen.
It's terrifying.
I want to say precision. There's a certain precision about the way he enunciates very satisfyingly. Just the way he talks, the way words tumble out of his mouth. It's you can just listen to him all day. He's captivating in this show,
and he's how he's so very particular about things. Like, honestly, some of the tensest moments I've had with him is like in the workplace at Los Pollos Hermanos, like when he's just talking to like short order cooks about cleaning the grill, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm shitting it. Like, I'm imagining myself in the uniform of that worker, and you've got this very precise, controlling boss who wants things to be just right. And I'm sure that's something we can relate to. And it's crazy because of all the stuff that goes on around that, like the whole criminal enterprise thing. But even those small scenes, it just makes me feel so goddamn uncomfortable. He's just insanely good. And again, he was never on my radar before this. And any scene he was in Breaking Bad, it just was, it was uncomfortable, but it couldn't take your eyes off his performance. It's just, he's brilliant actor.
He was unpredictable, wasn't he, as Gustavo? Like, you never really, like you say, like where his position, and he could be very calm about it, couldn't he?
It's soothing. Like, he made you feel, really made you feel at ease, but at the same time, you knew that you shouldn't feel at ease. Like,
that was done perfectly.
It's like there's no wasted energy. He expels exactly the right amount of energy in everything, and no more. That you knew that, if shit went down, he would be extremely ruthless, as he was many, many times in the show.
And I did love, like, Gustavo using the Polo Chicken KFC restaurant chain as his, like, cover.
Yes.
But that's the thing. He's particular about, like, working in conditions, and he'll close up and he'll take the trash out and he'll mop the floor for his staff.
Good boss.
This ever-doting boss that anyone like us would love to work for, but we never do. Mm-hmm. However, the anxiety peaks when you sit there and you go, these people frying chicken and running a drive-through have no fucking idea what is running behind the scenes.
And he's putting them all in danger as well. Like, he's putting all of them in danger, which is super evil. You're
just like, and a few instances happen at the restaurant, and you're just like, and I loved how he calls it a restaurant as well. It's so formal, and he so just loves what he does at the same time as loving the other thing that he does at the same time, and it's mad. But just those poor people working there have no idea what could happen any second of any day there, and that just it bubbles up underneath you when you're watching it. When you just like, it's just you guys just have no idea.
And it almost seems like he prefers running the chicken restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I suppose it's the one thing he can publicly take pride in, but he takes it super seriously. It's almost as though he only provides logistics and supply of meth because he could, not because he felt particularly engaged to do it. He's just like, I could pull that off, so I will.
Yeah, and like his whole like story throughout the show and practically just taking down the drug cartel and putting himself in charge was magnificent. But it'd be amiss of me not to mention the way in which he left the show, because he became quite an untouchable character. He became one of those characters that you thought would never die, would be there to the very end. So when the whole plan that Walter created to finally dispose of him actually happened, and then, they pulled it off. I forgot the guy's name in the wheelchair.
The old Salamanca and a Hector.
Yes,
Hector.
Hector Salamanca, that's it. And the whole idea of planting this little bomb under the wheelchair, him hammering his little bell because he can't speak, so he's got his little bell to speak.
Sorry, that sounded wrong, but I'm immature.
Wired it up to the bell, so like when Gustavo comes to see him and he's like constantly tapping on that bell to try and get the bomb to go off. And then it goes off. It goes off. But then you see Gustavo come out of the room and do the thing that you've seen him do countless times throughout the show, and that is correct the position of his tie. Yeah. And you think, shit, he's got away with that.
In profile, right? You only see one side of his face.
Yeah.
That's
but
exactly
you get a reaction of the nurse, which I love. That's the inkling that something's not right. She's like, she stops and backs up, and you think, oh, wait a second. And it's masterful the way that's shot, that moment. Love it.
Yeah, because you can only see his
good side.
Yeah, his good side. And then the camera kind of pans round as he's correcting his tie, and then you see like the other half of his face has just been blown off. And it's just completely horrific, wasn't it? But what a way for that character to go.
It's just the proper like guttural, no! And he just cuts because he just realises that moment, like the most emotion you ever get from him. Just that scream, that shout, almost like a gut roar. Yeah, and then it's over as quickly as it starts.
And then he manages to compose himself in order to die in the hallway.
Yeah.
Even his walk was very much it was him. It was very
Yeah.
kind of robotic. Yeah.
The effect was really good too. That episode was a year after The Walking Dead started, which was another AMC show. And I remember reading that they were able to pull that effect off because they got a lot of practice doing the zombies.
Huh, no way. I didn't realise there was that whole
I
connection.
didn't understand that either. It's nuts.
Well, next great character from Breaking Bad was Hank Schrader, whatever.
Fucking hate this guy.
Yeah, no one
Mr.
likes
Dean
him.
Norris, Mr. Starship Trooper himself. And like, what an inspired moment it must have been for the writers to go, let's make this character Walter's brother-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and have this policeman so close to Walter while he's building up this drug business. And Dean plays it so well once again, like, but he portrays the character, he's like the most liked character in the show, surely, right? Well, maybe one of
liked
the most liked.
by the other characters.
Sorry, Steve?
You mean liked by the other characters or like liked by the viewers?
By the viewers.
Yes. Okay. I fucking hate him, but sure. I can imagine that he's popular. I mean, look, he is entertaining to watch. Yes. No, you're right. Yes, he is.
But
He is
like
one of
that
the main
guy.
ones.
He's like that guy at a barbecue that just pisses you off. Like
Yeah.
he's just very like sure of himself. He's a bit of just a cocky kind of little thumb. You know, he's got his sort of moderately attractive wife. He's just got a good job, and he's just always in your face.
And
Yeah.
always
Talking about his minerals.
perpetually happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, get fucked.
Loves the sound of his own voice. Loves his own jokes. He is made of affectation. He is just masculine affectations, and he can't turn it off. And if I knew him in real life, I'd have a hard time being in the same room as this guy.
So
I totally get that.
I feel like I'm in the minority here when I say I liked him then.
I love him.
Extremely entertaining to watch. Like I love that he's in it, but and they pulled off his character really well. He's really well written. It's just that kind of personality.
I'm gonna have to dig them out, but I had like a Breaking Bad themed birthday party several years ago, and I've got some custom made Schrader brow beer mats somewhere.
Did you?
Yeah, proper him with the big old tankards, like and it's just
amazing.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Rich, I still have some of those from that party
Awesome.
that you held.
I was well chuffed for those. I was like, sick.
when we were around there, and I was just like, you have lost Paulus Hermanos cups. It's like, and
sherbet
coasters,
dip and blue
and
sherbet dip and little bags as well.
crystal blue candy.
Really? Oh my
And
god!
I was like, I was like, Rach, you have off the fucking chain. This is amazing.
I was giving them out at work to some of the people I knew that like Breaking Bad, and I had little baggies of white blue crystal in my work locker. Thankfully, there were never any random staff searches because
I think I might still have a baggie of that too somewhere.
Really? Wow, that's rotten now. So
They're in a box. They're in a box in the loft. We took a couple of the cups home and the coasters because I just thought that was just fantastic touch. And I think you had napkins as well, didn't you? With Hank on. Was it Hank on the napkins or was it Los Polos napkins?
Probably Los Polos Hermanos. Probably.
I was blown away by the whole experience. I was like, what is going on?
No, I love Hank Schrader. This is a Hank Schrader household, so love him.
Right.
As long as you don't get into crystals, Rich, don't get into that stuff.
Hey, Marie.
One of your rocks. They're not rocks, Marie.
The mineral. Oh, shit. Love him. I love him.
Just about to mention the whole breakdown after he got injured, the moments with the going mental over his stones.
When Marie gave him the little handy J there in the hospital bed, that was good. So. I love that scene so much. I was so happy when that scene happened. I was like, wait a minute. It was fantastic. Fantastic. Didn't get that on the HS. So.
Okay, well, let's move over to Jonathan Franks, who played Mike Emontrout. So sorry. I'm so sorry. Even to the characters, characters that do not exist, I apologise for the pronunciation of the surname.
Water. Love it.
And I don't know. Jonathan must have had to watch a lot of depressing stuff before he came on set, just so he could look as grumpy as possible.
He's so melty, I love him. Just
his face has melted over the past 30 years. But he's always played these really droopy dog characters.
Yeah.
Even in Beverly Hills Cop, he was a heavy in that, but he was still very monotone, slow talking.
He is the most morally uncorrupted character in this show. Obviously, he's a bad guy, objectively, but all of his motivations are sympathetic, and the way he conducts himself professionally, he wants to keep bloodshed to a minimum. He doesn't like doing morally reprehensible things. He doesn't do it for fun. He's doing it for very specific reasons. Yeah, he's doing it for very. I absolutely love this character. I think he's fantastic.
To me, he feels like the most grounded character in all of the whole Breaking Bad universe.
And he's also sort of a victim too, right? Because he was involved in police corruption, but he was kind of strong armed into it, kind of, and he lost his son, right?
Yeah,
he lost his son. Yeah.
No,
he's but yet again, he's just another intriguing character, really, in the way he was portrayed and very well acted. And there's that theme going through the show as well, where they're all such completely different characters, but they all work quite well together, and they're all just extremely well acted and written. And I guess that's all you really need for for a hit TV show, isn't it? But
goes a long way for sure.
Yeah. A couple more actors that I just want to mention before we move on, and the first is Anna Gunn, who plays Skylar.
Yes,
the poor suffering wife, and
one of the only not bad characters, but I think her writing went downhill as it went on. I think she was kind of neglected as a character, and she was demoted to "I'm getting in my husband's way," and became less complicated as it went on. But she's still great.
Yeah, I get that. I guess when she in the later series when she came on screen, I wasn't as interested on what was going on. Even when she found out about Walt's secret business, and there were other characters I just wanted to go back to and watch instead of Skylar, unfortunately.
If you watch her in the first couple of seasons, she's way more interesting and way better. And then she just turns to drink. And
do you think and do you think that's because she found out, like I say, and it was after that point really, that she lost that kind of edge, of Walter trying to scurry around and make sure that she wasn't
making breakfast and stuff and being really lovely and dating.
Because Walt's kind of subservient before that, and so she does lose. She doesn't strike me as the kind of character that wants to be in charge, but she is she wears the pants in that relationship. But then she loses that, and then I don't know. They could have done something more interesting with her, I think.
Again, it's a two-dimensional character that goes from first couple of seasons great, and then drops off for like a season and a half, and then all of a sudden becomes that three-dimensional character again later on. But I remember stopping breathing when she confronted Walt at a breakfast table and just turned around and said, "You're a drug dealer," and I was like, "Whoa!" And this is before mainstream spoilers, and YouTube wasn't even as the juggernaut that it is now. I don't believe either at that point. And it's like, whoa. Fuck off. It was that moment I remember not breathing for like a second where I just instinctively knew it was coming.
Was that the scene as well where, I'm trying to remember, is that the scene where she like gets the kitchen knife and they're proper at each other's throats?
No, this is a more casual kind of
Okay,
talk.
I'm trying to remember now. Okay. No,
and
Skylar puts it all together, and
the way she says it as well is like married couples having an elephant in the room between a married couple is a really common thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Until eventually someone breaks the seal and they just mention it. So it was that, except it was about him being a drug dealer, which is great.
I did like her whole plot line with Ted and this whole is she going to have an affair or not kind of thing with him. And then, obviously, like Ted being at the birth of their daughter because Walt was too busy
That's fucked.
doing a drug deal somewhere.
Yeah.
And I thought that was quite interesting storyline. And obviously, I felt so sorry for Ted in the way he went in the end.
His death is really something.
Just,
Last person I want to talk about, and I think he probably was one of the best actors in the show, Mr. R.J. Might, who played Walter White Jr. And a fascinating character for many reasons.
His name's Flynn.
Yeah. Flynn.
Yeah, sorry. My mistake.
That upset him. Come on.
Yeah.
Right. But how do you feel like RJ portrayed Flynn?
He's great and so sincere and innocent and nice and kind, and it just makes you wonder how Walt could do that to his son, who is all of those things. But yeah, I don't actually know very much about the actor. I assume is it cerebral palsy?
It is, yeah.
Yes. If I remember
And presumably,
rightly,
presumably he's not acting that. Presumably he is a person with cerebral palsy, right?
yeah. If
Yeah,
I remember
he's
rightly,
okay.
there's an interview where he said that he played it up a little bit
Yeah.
for more
Okay.
dramatic presence.
Yeah.
So that's not as severe as that. But if you watch the actor interviewed, he does have cerebral palsy, but not as advanced as Flynn's Junior's portrayal. And it's just nice that I think we're finally on the cusp of when Breaking Bad was out, where they actually started to employ actors with said disability to portray a character with said disability. And I think Breaking Bad was one of the first to really embrace that and really be...
And it's so well done as well that I don't think it really occurred to me at the time, but it is kind of unusual and kind of a big deal that they just cast an actor with cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, but yeah, it's really well done and he's really good.
But I think Vince Gilligan and the people behind the scenes were one of those people like, well, we're not going to get an actor to pretend because it's just going to open a fucking can of worms, isn't it?
That'd be fucked up.
Which it would do.
Yes.
And it still does, even now.
Yeah.
So by doing it, it was just supporting people with the conditions and saying, you want to act? Come on. We're all humans here. I mean, for fuck's sake, like, just... we're not going to judge you, just come in.
And no one even really thinks about it. That's what's so wonderful as well. No one actually even ever looks back as, oh, he's the character, the son with cerebral palsy. They just think of him as he's Walt's son, and they think about the scenes he has and the impact he had in the role, and no one. It's never like a talking point.
No,
and I love that. I absolutely love that. So,
but they very rarely mention cerebral palsy either. There's a couple of times where Walt hammers it home and says, my son's got cerebral palsy, although Bryan Cranston has a unique pronunciation of that word. Yeah, he calls it, is it cerebral?
Oh.
But it's just nice that they never address it, because why should they? Yeah. We've all known people. I've had close friends that are disabled physically. Never bothered me. Not once. Why should it? Why should you remind the audience in an exposition dump?
It
it's
doesn't
just
have
a human
to be
being
like
as
part
much
of
as
his character. He's a character that happens to have cerebral palsy.
Yeah, and it would be really easy for the show to overegg it, and it would be like, Walter White's doing all these bad things, even though his son is disabled, but they don't do that. They sort of let you get there on your own.
Have a chat about our favourite episode of Breaking Bad, and thankfully we've all chosen a different one, so made it a bit more interesting. And Steve, let's go to you first. And what was one of your favourite episodes? I'd like to say
it's really difficult. This was a difficult question, a possibly impossible question to have one favourite episode. But in order for this format to work, I had to pick one. So I went for Crazy Handful of Nothing, which is quite early. It's episode 6 in season 1. And I love this episode because I think it is a really good example of an episode of Breaking Bad, because it's got a lot going on in it. I think it's one of the best cold opens in the show. Walt has just turned down charity from his old extremely rich work friends, and he decides to cook meth instead, which is an important decision that he makes because that speaks to his ego. Like, it is arguable in the 5 episodes before this that he's just a victim of circumstance, and he has to do this. He's got no choice. But in this episode, he chooses now to cook meth instead because of his ego. And it opens with him telling Jesse, I don't want anything to do with the grotty side of this. I just want to cook meth. You're going to distribute it. You're going to find a buyer, etc., etc. But this is all intercut with footage of him like walking through or like walking away from a building that's on fire and he's got a shaved head and you don't know what's going on, and obviously that's incongruent with what he's saying. So you're just like, holy shit, things go down in this episode, and it's the first time he really gets his hands. I mean, he's killed before now, but this is the first time like he properly gets his hands dirty and he gets like right into the horrible, mucky criminal underworld. So yeah, it's the first episode where he shaves his head. It's the Heisenberg look. How happens in this episode? He's losing his hair because of the chemotherapy, so he just decides to shave it off because of that. But also he wants to look intimidating when he confronts what's he called? Tuco? Yes.
Yeah.
Because Jesse was not intimidating enough when trying to set up a drug deal. He's secretly paying for chemo with his drug money. He lies to Skylar about that. So this is one of the first examples of him like really getting trapped in his own web of lies. Like, she hangs out with him at chemo. She tells her to go home, and then he pays for it with his drug money. And you just watch it like, this is all going to come crashing down around you. Well, come on. It's ridiculous. So his DEA brother-in-law is investigating stolen meth cooking stuff from his school, which obviously he stole, but he just gives Hank the runaround. And it's one of the first examples of him just openly misleading and lying to people constantly and getting away with it and being really good at it too. And this show is full of that tension where he's like almost getting caught, but he manages to get away with it. And there's an awesome scene later on as well where they're playing cards. I can't remember what card game they're playing, but he bluffs Hank and wins, which is sort of calls back to the title of the episode, Crazy Handful of Nothing. He manages to bluff Hank and he wins, even though he's got a shit hand. And this is when he starts to think, I'm gonna beat this guy because I'm cleverer than he is. Like, he's way stronger and more masculine than I am, but I'm gonna win because I'm smarter. It's just it's also that it's the first time he calls himself Heisenberg. So it's just got everything, man. This episode's a microcosm of what this whole show is, and it's just full of really fantastic stuff. And there's a scene where he's teaching his class, his science class, and he talks about the differences between sudden reactions and gradual reactions. Obviously, we're about to watch, however many seasons of him gradually changing as he reacts to his circumstances. And the sudden reaction refers to the closing of the episode, which is what we saw part of in the cold open, which is him chucking fulminated mercury at a bunch of drug dealers and blowing them up.
God, so good.
And then he walks away from the carnage with his shaved head and the blood on his face, and he just gets into his car and screams because
that part of that episode.
Because he's just done all that shit. But I mean, yeah, I would also scream.
Yeah.
Just the whole seeing him go through all that emotion at the end that he bottled up, so he didn't show it to Tuco to keep it cool and everything, and then for him to unleash it like that, like it must have been all the adrenaline and fear, but also the high of pulling that off and coming out 50 grand richer, all in a few seconds in that car seat. And yet again, Bryan Cranston just acting, it showed all that to the viewer in those seconds, and it was incredible.
And that's the moment when he realizes that he can do it, and he can feed his ego, and also he gets away with stealing the drug cooking equipment by letting Hank pin it on the janitor, who then gets fired. And I'm pretty sure this is the first instance of an innocent person getting fucked over by, like, Walt just lets that happen because he's like, well, I need to not get caught, so I guess I'm just going to let the janitor get in trouble. It's fucked up, man.
It's not right. All the things he did, that was the worst.
Yeah, ending someone's career, and watching it happen.
Rich and Chris, do you have anything you want to say on that episode?
Steve's covered it off very nicely, especially taking upon the Heisenberg mantle. I think that's obviously of the moments the most iconic. So
Heisenberg was a Nazi, by the way.
he was. Yes.
So there's a reason, he chose a bad guy name.
He was a scientist, though. It wasn't like he was a
Yeah, I believe so.
a trooper.
But also, like, I love just how, as Heisenberg, he just puts Tuco in his place, and Tuco realizes, "Fuck, I'm not the biggest." Maybe there's a moment where he just thinks that he's, not as powerful as he thought he was.
Chris, let's come to you for your favourite Breaking Bad episode.
I mean, again, like Steve said and Rich said, it's difficult with so many masterful episodes of this show to pinpoint. But one of the standouts that I've always remembered is 4 Days Out. And again, like Steve, it's very early on. I think season 2, episode 9, where Walt goes in for a consultation for results for a scan and glances over and he sees a mass in one of his lungs and thinks, "Oh shit, that's a big old growth there." And in his head, he's like, "I'm totally fucked." And then he just decides to take Jesse out to the middle of the New Mexico desert and cook meth for a day or two. And I see it as it's essentially a bottle show, this episode. The only cast members from a regular thing they bookend the beginning and the end in the doctor's office. And that's it. The rest of the 45 or so minute runtime is a 2-man play with Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston. And it's just stood out to me as this beautiful study of two people who, there's a massive generation gap, but given the circumstances, they can become friends and work it out together. That just speaks so many levels. And there's so many shows that have done these 2-man play episodes. And it's just done so well because at the start of it, Walt's still unsure about Jesse. Jesse's still that cocky high schooler who we all know, those cocky high schoolers who never grow up and you still see hanging outside Weatherspoons, And you're like, Jesus Christ, mate, you're 40. Why are you still hanging out with these people? And you just see them both start to respect each other as the episode goes on. And Jesse starts to see Walt not as the science teacher that latched onto Jesse for his knowledge, but an actual human being with human feelings and limited time left on this planet, as well, this episode would lead you to believe anyway. And Jesse kind of takes pity on him like a kind of sick uncle. And it's nice because you see a part of Jesse that Jesse always hides. And you see it briefly in this episode and quite a few. And it's just nice to see it happen. And then they just both get themselves out of this pickle together when they're stuck in the desert when Jesse leaves the keys in the RV ignition and the battery dies. They've got no cell phone signal. And then the generator blows up. Jesse throws all the drinking water on it. So it's a classic stuck in the middle of nowhere and all your amenities just are not there. And they just have to science the shit out of it to get out and make a battery out of scraps from the RV and
another example of Walt being a science hero. He just fucking builds the battery they need.
Yeah, out of some sponges and some brake pads and some copper wire and you got some great comedy moments in there when Walt's just walking Jesse through the science of batteries. He says, "Now, what element would we put into this acid with the sponges?" And yeah, it's just this lovely fatherly paternal thing, and Walt's just grinning like, "Yeah, I know shit," and he's shaking his thing, and Jesse's like, "Element? Oh, wire," and you just groan. Just like, "Oh fuck!" But again, it's just that classic high school dropout that Jesse. He's a high school dropout, but he's clever at the same time, and that's what people just forget about this show is Jesse's not just your high school waster. He just probably one of those people who's probably way cleverer than he let on and just got bored at school. And Walt ends up just teaching Jesse basic life lessons, really. And it's just nice. You get that moment where Walt just gives up because they can't charge the thing and he just slumps in a chair and just gives up. And Jesse goes over to him and says, "Right, Mr. White, and then Jesse wakes up, one morning, and Walt's just hand cranking his generator to get the electricity to generate to charge the battery a little bit, just to start the van. But it's just a lovely episode of two people being stuck in the middle of nowhere. And again, X-Files has done it, Star Trek has done it on numerous occasions, of just being stuck, essentially in a desert and surviving. And this show just did it really, really well.
It does, even though it's like very understated, but it does still have one of the most tense moments I
Yes,
still recall.
it does.
With
Yep.
Jesse leading Hank to the RV and
Yep.
Walt's just leaning against the door, like with everything he has to stop Hank from getting in there and finding out the whole operation. And it's just like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Is this show going to be 2 seasons long? Because it's just,
Does
I
he lean on the
remember that.
door partly to stop him, but also to cover the bullet holes, right?
There's probably that too.
Yeah.
Was that in this episode?
I don't remember when the bullet holes appear in the door. It's possible that they weren't there.
That
yet.
wasn't this episode. That was when. That was when Walt phones Marie to fake a hospital. That's later on.
Oh, right.
This-
Okay.
Yeah. This is just literally Walt and Jesse in the desert, and then they finally get the RV started, and they pull up outside the hospital consultant for Walt's results.
Yes.
When he said
And
that,
then
I thought to myself, did that happen? Did I completely forget a whole scene, and I remembered what scene you're talking about?
But then he gets the results at the end, right, and he finds out that, he's
in
not
remission.
dying as fast
Yeah.
as he thought he was, and he gets
Yeah.
really cross about it.
And that's what the beauty of this episode is just he is relieved but also angry because he's loving the buzz of what he's doing and creating. He's finally found a use for his advanced chemistry skills, and he's loving that buzz, and he's loving the fact also I think Walter White also loves the fact that he makes, in a roundabout way, he makes others happy with the product that he makes.
So,
At the same time as
excitement is like, it's infectious.
Yeah, at the same time as earning a fuck ton of money. And this is the episode where they work out, is it 650 grand each? Walt works out if they cook that amount from the chemicals that they have in the RV, if they keep going, they can make that amount of money each. And they're both just like amazed at when they do the math. It's like, holy shit.
Because he's circumventing the system, right, with genius. Because he's a genius, right? But he's completely wasted by being a teacher because of the stupid decisions that he's made. But he's an absolute genius, and he's scienced his way out of his situation, which, I can imagine is an incredible high. Because it's important to remember as well, right, like that Walter is also a victim of what is, in my opinion, a pretty fucked situation when it comes to healthcare in the US. Because he's got cancer, and he's fucked because he can't pay to treat his cancer. Which is a really that's a really important theme in this show, because that's pretty fucked, and it is arguable that financial pressure is the cause of a lot of crime, but let's not go there.
People are just bad, Steve.
So yeah, he's cheated. He's found a shortcut with his brain. It must have been incredible.
And you're getting that buzz, and it's just that I just love that ending in the bathroom where it's just Bryan Cranston looking in the mirror, and he's equally as angry and relieved. At the same time, he's been extremely frustrated by now he's kind of got himself in too deep and can't get out, but he loves it anyway. And he's also annoyed that he's gone into remission, which means he'll survive, which means the things that he's done to get there have been for nothing, essentially.
I'm going to live to see the consequences of these really fucked up things I've done.
Well, let's move from a nice episode to probably one of the most tragic. Rich, what was one of your favourite episodes of Breaking Bad?
I mean, I'm going for the lazy pick. It's probably considered by many people to be the best episode of Breaking Bad, and it's the best episode of television ever made, and that's Ozymandias, which is the episode before the penultimate episode of the final season. And it's basically just like a highlight reel of just pure heartbreak. It's just horrible moment after horrible moment. Just the way this episode starts is just heartbreaking in itself. Obviously, prior to this episode, Gomi and Hank are involved in the shootout with Uncle Jack and the neo-Nazis, and this episode opens with Hank taking heavy fire, and you just see the lifeless body of Gomi. I think it was shot from behind as well, and you don't ever see him killed. It's completely off screen. And it makes that so devastating because of the rapport, the friendship that Hank and Gomi have throughout the show. And Gomi's always there for him, always got his back. They always got each other's back. And here you are now, Gomi's dead. It was completely understated. Again, happened off screen. Hank's taken a shot to the leg. He's bleeding out. And it's just really, really sad because you're seeing Hank now, this big masculine figure, vulnerable. His best friend's dead, and you almost see in his face he knows the situation's not good, and probably just doesn't see a way out. And he doesn't, because Uncle Jack kills him. And to me, I still remember when I was watching this episode, it just, like, the world stopped. And never mind the heavily memed shot of Walt witnessing and processing Hank's death when he just drops to the ground and there's, like, no audio. It's just Walt just losing it. He just watched his brother-in-law be killed, and he knows that there is so much blood on his hands. Hank's death is, like, the most devastating moment of this whole show for me. It really got to me because I really did like Hank, and you knew this was the point where it all just caught up with, like, the family, and it just gone too far. And you're already thinking, like, my mind's already 2 steps ahead. I'm thinking, like, oh God, Skylar's just going to lose it. Poor Marie. It's awful. It's so awful. I think the only upside is that Hank has such an iconic line on his way out. You know, when he says, "My name's Asac Schrader, and you can go fuck yourself." And it just, I was like, yeah, I punched the air, and then just started to sob immediately after. It's iconic. It's such a roller coaster of emotions, from just that pure, like, fuck yeah, euphoria to absolute despair and death. Other than that, there's a lot of revelations in this episode as well. This is the episode where Walt tells Jesse that he watched Jane die, and that was horrifying. That stayed with me from the episode, and that was probably the first time I really hated Walt. It broke my heart. I really wanted Jesse to be happy, and the life he was starting to build with Jane was just quite lovely. And I know they kind of slipped a bit. They obviously were doing drugs together, but Walt just selfishly knowing that Jane is ruining his plans because he's taking Jesse away from him, and just watching her suffocate on her own vomit and doing nothing because he sees it as a way out. Yeah, that's just horrible. And I guess obviously the scene was important, him telling him, because yeah, it was obviously always eventually going to come out, and I guess it was a pivotal moment in their relationship, and just Jesse's reaction is just, yeah, that stays with me. It's just, even him telling Jesse what he did or what didn't do, it didn't, like, redeem him in any way. He was just a piece of shit, but now Jesse knows. Yeah, it's just, there's so much to compute this episode. You've got the whole scene as well, and I know I referenced it incorrectly earlier, but the whole, like, confrontation that Skylar has with Walt, and she slashes him with the knife. And I don't know what it was, that scene, it really caught me. I don't know if it's like kind of watching your parents fight, but the way they were going at each other. I remember when I first watched this episode, and that scene, I can't describe why, but I just burst into tears watching it. It was just horrible seeing how much everything just broke down, and they're just going off at each other. And Anna Gunn's acting in this scene is, like, just phenomenal, regardless of how much her character kind of got a little bit diminished at this point, and she just sold the absolute shit out of that. And it escalates from there. Walt kidnaps Holly, their newborn baby, and it's just there's so much escalation in this, and it's crazy to think this all happens in one episode. Hank's death, the revelation about Jane, kidnap of a child. It's just all in one episode. It's just, yeah.
Is this the episode where he phones Skylar and he knows the phone is being tapped, and so he, like, takes on the Heisenberg character to sort of clear her of any wrongdoing?
Yeah, he completely exonerates her.
Inspired moment. That is great.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
I think this portrays, like, where Walter's journey started from and is at this point, but the portrayal that he still cares for his family, even though now he's like a drug lord killer.
I think it's almost an acceptance at this point. He knows now all this is bigger than their family, and, like, they can't survive this. Like, this is not something he can do on the sly, or even with her knowledge, and those two things can't coexist. He knows, like, this family, this life is done, and whatever happens is going to be going his separate ways, I think, from Skylar, and it's his one, like, kind of noble act, I guess, at this point of the series, but yeah. And then obviously he gets picked up by the vacuum cleaner repair guy, and
is this the first time we see him? Yeah. Is this his first?
I believe so. I think it
is. Yeah. That whole thing is great as well. The show has a lot of, like, underworld systems. Like, you get to see a lot of the way things work in the underworld, right? Like the way all the drugs are trafficked through the chicken restaurant, and also the vacuum cleaner salesman who makes you disappear and gives you a new identity. It's just really clever the way it plays out. It's really good.
I'll still always remember, like, Walter's reaction handcuffed in the back of that car and seeing, Jack's gang come in and realising what's going to happen and trying to get Hank to go, to get out of there, just go, because he knows that Hank's going to go. And that just fueled the emotion even more so when that scene actually occurred.
Yeah, because then at that point, that Walt is right. Because obviously everything that you've seen with him that Hank hasn't necessarily seen, you've got the advantage of knowing as well, and Hank's fate is sealed, and it's horrible. But I think at that point, I knew, Hank's not going to be gone from the situation. He's going to be embroiled in it, and I think there was an acceptance at this point that he's not coming out of this alive, and you're just kind of counting down to it. And I just remember my stomach turning right up to that point that Uncle Jack pulled the trigger. You just knew that something was going to change like massively, and it was it's still sticks with me. And Marie as well, her character, that gave her a bit of a moment to shine as well, like the discovery of Hank being killed. And I don't think it was necessarily in this episode. I think it might come after, even in the finale when you see her in the kitchen at one point. I think it just it sucks, seriously. It really, really sucks. But this episode, again, it's a safe pick, I know, but for me,
I mean, one of us had to choose it, right?
You're just trying to subvert expectations by not picking this, and this episode was just like, whoa, it was just absolutely phenomenal. And there's also another thing happens. This is when bloody Jesse gets taken captive as well and gets locked in a cage. It's just so much stuff in one episode.
Feature packed. Feature packed.
It's a massive checklist of that's bullshit. Seriously, it's just bad things. No nice stuff. No levity. It's just pressing.
And I think it makes, like, arguably up to this point, obviously Walt knows how serious all the shit he's doing is, but this is maybe the first time he is forced to confront the very worst consequences of his actions. Finally, it all comes crashing down.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, moving from one tragic episode to another, for one of my favourite episodes of Breaking Bad, and Rich has already alluded to it, and that's Phoenix from Series 2 as well. I think it was episode 12. And there is like 2 or 3 particular scenes in this episode that always stick out to me personally. And obviously the biggest scene is where you mentioned about Jane's death, and that was very shocking to me at the time. It comes very early in the TV show itself, and just seeing Walter's reaction, like he didn't have to say anything in the scene when Jane suffocated on her vomit. It was all shown in his face, and you could see the ride of emotions that he was going through. Like I say, he's quite early on in the show. It's still quite early in Walt's journey to becoming this ruthless killer, but you could see like his emotions of like sadness that this has happened. But then you also see the relief in his face as well, or the realization that he can just let this go and he can't be held responsible for it. He can get away with just letting this happen and getting this problem out of the way. So he can, like Rich said, he can just get Jesse back to where he needs to be to carry on with the drug business. And that scene was just so powerful to me at the time. I knew then that I was really in for a real good ride of a show. And it also told me that no matter what I expected going forward, that I just can't expect anything because I just don't know what they're going to throw at me next. And and then on the other side, like you see this happening, and then you automatically feel so sorry for Jesse as well, because it seems like he's like genuinely happy. He's got his $400,000 from this drug business, and they can go off and make a new life for themselves. They say, Jane says to Jesse, like, let's make a clean break of this. Let's get clean from the drugs. Let's just run away with this money and let's just make a life for ourselves. And Jesse, with all his problems and loner, I guess, he was so happy that he finally found someone who was willing to put up with him and go and do this with him. So all those different things in just that one scene, it was just so again, such an emotional ride. And a couple of other things that stuck out for me in this episode, and one was obviously John Delancey was guest starring
Jane's dad,
as Jane's dad, which was a nice, Star Trek reference there. But it was really cool to see him play or portray a different character than just Q. from which I've always just known him for. But that scene where Walt is out on his nappy run before he lets Jane die and has this whole conversation with Jane's dad in the pub, I thought that was a really cool scene. They had this real, like, really nice dad heart-to-heart conversation, and then Walt goes off and lets his daughter die. Awesome. But then the other part of the episode as well was, again, just portraying like his family's love for Walter and his health problems, and his family just lovingly trying to help him to like raise money for him so he can have his treatment, his chemotherapy. And like Walter Jr. / Flynn had created this website so people could donate to the cause and try and raise some money. There's such a loving like touch, and it just digs into your heart on how loving and caring and everything else. And I've gone backwards through the episode, so you've started off on this such a loving moment of a son trying to help his dad through his love, and then gradually going through and watching this person that he loves, that Flynn loves so much, just let someone die. And it's just another roller coaster episode. But
if I remember rightly, they actually made that site as well. I think it was actually a live site, the SaveWalterWhite.com.
Rich, it's still there.
It's still there.
What,
Marvelous.
that viral marketing's still online?
Yeah, because I checked it today. Today. It's still there. I was on it today. SaveWalterWhite.com, I think it was, isn't it?
No, we're recording a podcast, but I'm actually typing this in right now. Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm doing
it is. It's still
I'm
there.
doing exactly
look at it.
that.
It's gorgeous. Big Comic Sans. Oh, love it.
That's crazy.
This is stunning.
Oh my god.
A little guest book. I love it. Visitors so far. Oh god.
It's such a history thing, isn't it?
God, this is stunning, man. Seriously.
That's so well done.
Beautiful.
That's crazy.
But what I like about it as well, like, they obviously, the character of Junior or Flynn, obviously, this is, early like, internet website building, wasn't it? This is like so 90s. Obviously, he was using this old stuff, and this is just delightful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. No Squarespace here.
No.
No.
Just HTML all the way.
I don't know if you guys want to say anything about the episode.
Oh, wow.
I think I'll rescue you, Rich, while you're still bowled over by the website. Jane's death, the way they did that, the way they depicted her death is super disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was inspired, the way they chose to do it, but it is unceremonious and sudden and undeserved, like very, very undeserved. It really that really stuck with me as well. It's fucked up because they're both on a trip, right?
Yeah, they both just had some heroin pumped into their
system. She doesn't even know it's happening. Oh man, it sucks. It sucks.
They kind of like reference it earlier on in the episode as well, because they again are hitting off with heroin. But then Jane says to Jesse to make sure that he lays on his side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because that's the position, the safe position to be in when they're on their high. So then when Walter comes in and sits on the bed and she moves onto her back, you know that something's bad is going to happen. And so
the whole thing's
just really clever plotting.
The whole thing's sad as well because the way it's set up. Because obviously, I mean, I really love Jane. I think she's really sweet. But the way it's set up was ultimately she is kind of the bad influence on Jesse. I mean, that's when they start doing all the heroin. But they have that scene early on where like her dad shows up to the house and obviously sees they've been sleeping together, sees all the drug paraphernalia around, and just goes off at Jesse as if like he's the one that's pulling her into this and basically undoing all the work she's doing in with her rehab, with her sessions. And it's just, you feel so bad for Jesse at that point because it's not on him. They obviously are going through this together, but he's not this horrible bad force that's dragging her down a dark path, and her dad doesn't realise that. And then, the way it ends up with her losing her life, it's just, the whole thing's just sad. And despite all the lovely moments, like there's that thing, I think they have some kind of bust up, and obviously I know she does all the illustrations, she does the whole like apology girl thing, she does that drawing to him.
That's great.
And I was like, it's so lovely and wholesome. I just really love Jane.
Like,
and then the way it ends, it just sucks.
She definitely leads Jesse astray.
She does.
The drugs. But Like drug addicts are victims, right? So
Yes,
she's
undoubtedly.
not a bad person for doing that.
No.
They're both victims, and so yeah, Jane is great, and her death is awful. It sucks.
It's just, you get TV shows that you watch, and some things, you forget a lot of things that happen in TV shows. But then there's just that one TV show that comes along every now and again that just has a scene that just embeds in your brain and it just does not go away. And that is one of them for me. And it's just powerful and sad all at the same time. That's the power of Breaking Bad.
Absolutely.
Get out of this sad emotional state that we've got ourselves into and talk about the ending of Breaking Bad. And I've got this whole thing I copy and pasted from the internet to read out, but I'm not going to because it's very convoluted and it's a lot happens in this last episode. But basically, Rich kind of alluded to it earlier, where Jesse's been taken to Jack's compound and is captured, and Walter's been in hiding. He decides he's going to come out and surrender, but then he decides to poison people and this, that, and the other. But I mean, it all boils down to Walter getting to Jack's compound and trying to break Jesse out and escape, and then obviously him not escaping alive. So, what do you guys think? Do you think this was this the ending that you kind of expected to see?
No, not the
No.
automated,
Not in a million years
like
did I know that this was going to get
trunk
unbolt this
mounted,
way.
like
The
Automatic
automated the automated trunk mounted automatic weapon goes all the way up to the line of being too much without quite crossing it.
yeah.
Like, it's still on this side of believable, just
just like how, again, to keep hitting this dead donkey on top of it, like it's that believability of a James Bond gadget. It's just acceptable in the zeitgeist, but also completely batshit crazily just not possible.
Yeah, like watch it with your jaw on the floor.
They get away with it
and then
because
move
science.
on. Don't think about it too hard. It's
just
fine.
Because science, they kind of get away with it, and because TV show, and
But was it a fitting end for this character of Walter White? Was you sad that he didn't kind of get away with it?
No, I think it was right. I liked that. I mean, I think we knew he was never going to get away with it, but I think it's right that he died, but what I love is that he died on his own terms. He technically died by his own hands. He got taken out by his own mounted automated trunk weapon thing. So words got tied up there, but yeah, he took a bullet, and it wasn't the cancer. It wasn't other nefarious people he was mingling with. Ended his life. It was him. He died by his own hands, but it wasn't quite suicide, and I thought it was quite powerful and poignant, and it was right. And he was actually kind of at peace at the end. I mean, the whole scene, the end with the My Baby Blue, and he's just walking around his tanks or whatever the paraphernalia was, and he's at peace. He's happy. He's marveling in the work, what he's achieved. He's looking at it one last time, and he's just kind of, you can see he's at peace.
Yeah,
and it's nice. It's actually really nice.
Yeah, he sort of does get away with it, right? Like,
I guess.
Like,
yeah.
sure, he
out of
dies,
circumstance,
but he doesn't really face like personal consequences aside from dying, of course, which granted is a fairly big consequences. But he does that to himself, pretty much.
Yeah.
So he sort of does get away with it, but it's okay because he gets Jesse out, and that's great. Yeah. Wait, that does happen in the finale, right? I'm not thinking of El Camino.
Yeah.
No, Jesse doesn't. Yeah.
He does. And then he's driving away going, yeah, bitch. Right? That's like the end of the show, right? Okay, fine. Good.
Exactly, yeah.
I love
that didn't happen.
I would love a count of how many times Jesse probably said the word bitch.
I'm sure there's a video somewhere.
I'm sure there
on
is
YouTube.
somewhere. I'm sure there's a whole video on YouTube that just counts them all.
Little ding counter in the corner. So,
I really liked the ending, but like I can't fault it. I think it's, as far as endings go, I mean, endings are really hard. So
just look at Lost and Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. So in those relative terms, this ending is close too perfect.
Yeah.
But it makes me sad because I wish there was more, and I suppose that's a good place to be, right? We got left wanting more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we kind of
undoubtedly.
got that with Better Call Saul,
Yeah,
especially
true.
in the later series. But
Somehow
yeah,
surpassed this show. I will never never wrap my head around that, in my opinion.
you know, when we see them in Better Call Saul, we still just want more of them.
Yeah.
And we don't want them to go away. And like when they do go away and we don't see them come back again, you're like, I just want Walter and Jesse back.
Again, it's taken us this long to bring up Saul Goodman because he's not come up yet in the entire recording. And I don't know if that was your plan at all, Jason, to bring him up eventually.
Well, we couldn't do a Breaking Bad recording without mentioning Saul, could we?
It's just,
you know,
like, Better Call Saul stands on its own as its own brilliant TV show in its own right. And like Rich said, it kind of, in a lot of ways, is better than Breaking Bad on its own merits as its own show. But in the later 2 seasons, it was a bit heavy-handed with the, we'll just throw Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul in there. It's like, but no, that you're missing, that just, it kind of cheapens their sacrifice out a little bit. Because you had closure with their story.
Yeah.
And by putting Walt and Jesse in Better Call Saul, I've had a few months to think it through, and I'm not too sure if I like it or not for that.
Of similar mindset.
Yeah,
I never liked them. They always feel compelled to have to wrap everything in a nice little bow and have this weird kind of like connective tissue when you know it's already connected. I don't need to see them to be like, oh yes, this is a Breaking Bad sequel and prequel.
Yeah,
and never mind
it
if
was-
Aaron Paul looks haggard. Like,
Yeah, it was
"You bitch."
like it was
he's like
it was
5 o'clock shadow
ham-fistedly,
and
yeah,
tight eyes.
ham-fistedly just thrown in there. Like, oh, just in case you forgot, this is a Breaking Bad property.
Yeah,
And it's
I
like,
wasn't
just
thrilled.
don't put them in there. Reference it maybe, but then
Yeah.
as the show got on, and you had Marie come in, and you had Dean Norris come in again as Hank, and you're just like,
Marie
I
was
understand.
brilliant though. That scene
Yeah.
with her was fantastic.
I understand having Hank in there as it's a prequel, but also at the same time, did he really need to be in there? Obviously, you're crafting this universe out, and it kind of when you see Hank come in again in Breaking Bad, you're like, but he's already been part. It's weird,
Yeah.
disjointed feeling that you get from throwing.
I was
people in
okay
there like that.
with Walt and Jesse turning up in Better Call Saul, but what was that scene with them like just talking about potato chips? The time was weird.
Stop it.
Yeah.
What's that about?
That was
Somehow
brilliant.
Jesse looked more
looked more Jesse, didn't he?
than he did in the whole Prestige television show on AMC. So
For people who don't know, there's a Super Bowl advert with Jesse and Walt in it. It's great. Go on YouTube.
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's better than El Camino. So
I think we said on one of the last recording. I think there's a bit of AI smoothing going on that
wouldn't
in the
surprise me.
Super Bowl commercial.
Say my name. Say my name.
They're baked, not fried.
brilliant,
Incredible.
brilliant.
Right, let's get this show wrapped up because I'm sure Steve's girlfriend's going to be knocking on the door soon, wanting to go to bed. So let's get our verdicts and our scores in for Breaking Bad. And will this be third episode in a row that Chris gives out a big whopping 10? So let's go to Chris and find out
no, not me
whether that
first.
actually happens or will he not. The tension. Chris, what is your verdict on Breaking Bad and what score are you going to give this?
My verdict is obviously quite high. Hey, to coin a phrase for that. Because again, it was a show that I didn't give its time, and I discovered, like you guys, fairly late in the game. Like, I'm not one of those people that are straight onto network TV. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like, it took me ages to try Game of Thrones, and then I regretted investing so many hours into that. But this is just, I think, easily a solid 9.5 for me.
What's it going to be? 9 or 9.5?
I'm going to go 9.5.
You're going for
I'm going to
9.5?
balance it out because, like any show, it has its bad moments, it has its great moments, it has its questionable moments. But yeah, it's going to be a 9.5 for me. I enjoyed the episode I watched the other day for this recording, and I need to do another rewatch properly. And we did intend to go straight from Better Call Saul straight into Breaking Bad, and we never did. For some reason, life just snowballed. And but yeah, I need to check it out again. I'm going to go for a 9.5 rating.
There you go, ladies and gents. No 10 third time in a row. But will it be a 10 from Rich?
Yeah, definitely. It's the best 5 seasons of television. That's not The Simpsons. Best show ever made. Yes, I love it. Yeah, I could wax lyrical, but yeah, I'm going to keep it simple. It's just a big hearty 10 from me.
Beautiful. And Steve?
I'm feeling weird now about giving Top Secret a 10.
Too late, mate. It's all locked in. It's locked in.
Because I'm like, I have to. Because I'm like, I have to be reasonable here and say like 9.7 or something, right? But then I'm saying it's not as good as Top Secret, which just feels weird.
Well, luckily, like, and if the listeners haven't realised, like the TV shows goes on its own separate board.
Perfect.
Okay.
We're going to have a TV show board and a film board. You know, it seems fair to split it, right?
Do we still get the noise?
I've got a noise lined up, mate. Don't you worry.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm excited. All right, okay. I'm going to say 9.7. It's fucking phenomenal, and I love it. But I'm going to give it a 9.7 because I wish there was more, so I'm knocking off 0.3 for that reason.
Okay. 5 seasons was not enough.
Speaking of more, has there ever been any like tie-in novels or graphic novels for this? Because I've never really looked into it.
Don't think so.
Be an interesting thing, wouldn't it?
No, just the TV show and the Better Call Saul and the El Camino film.
I will say this: has anyone watched Metastasis, which is the Colombian telenovela adaptation of it? They did the whole show in one season, beginning to end. It's crazy. Yeah, Spanish language. Yeah, it's worth a watch. It's all on YouTube, I think. So,
didn't even know that existed.
Great tip. Cheers, dude. For me, I mean, I think I've said everything I really need to say about Breaking Bad, and I'm sure you've all kind of gathered the feelings that I have for the show and the power in which it engulfed me. So I can't really say much more else about it either, apart from just saying, just watch Breaking Bad if you haven't, and if you haven't watched Breaking Bad, we're sorry for spoiling it for you. But yeah, it's definitely one of my favourite all-time TV shows. I'm not going to give it a 10. But I will join Steve with the 9.7. So that means Breaking Bad gets an overall score of 38.9.
Ooh.
So that will go on our TV show board from above. As it's the only TV show on there right now, it obviously goes automatically straight on the board at number 1.
Okay. I like it. But
it doesn't quite work, but I don't care.
Wasn't ready for that.
So there you go, 38.9, Breaking Bad. Will the next TV show that we feature on the show get higher? I don't know. It'll be a toughie.
It's going to be tough, yeah.
That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you, as always, for joining us. If you would like to donate to the show, then please visit our coffee page where you can show your support. Starting from just a single pack, you can find a link in the show description or on our website. Speaking of the website, please give it a visit. We have articles, game reviews, our entire back catalogue of episodes, and much more at thewolfiepod.com. And you can also find the link on there to our Discord. So please come say hi. We'd love to see you there. But chaps, it's time to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Why did we all go very formal with that? I don't know.
That's weird, wouldn't it?
Weird. Goodbye, dear listener.
I was expecting at least one of you to say my name, bitch, or something. You know.
I am the danger. There you go.
I am the one who ends the podcast.
Yeah.
I am the one who rings the doorbell. That's a bit. Yeah.
Jesus.
I am the one to finish this podcast by saying my name has been Jason, and you've been listening to What's Wrong with Wolfie Retro Podcast to the max.
What's wrong with Wolfie? I can hear him barking.